Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Batra, page 84b, top of the page, with the words Yain v'chometz. Wine and vinegar are one type of food, min ha'echad hu. Rebbe Omer, shnei minin. Afilu tema rabbanan, ad kan lo pligi rabbanan alei, the Rebbe Ela, le'inyan maser truma, kid Rabbi Ila. Okay. Wine and vinegar are one type of food, which means that, for example, one separated truma from one of these with the intention that it should be exempt from the other. His action is effective. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says they are two types of food. Apparently, the Mishnah is not in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis and the Batra. The Gemara rejects this claim. You may even say that the Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, as the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, only with regard to the issue of whether one can separate tithe and truma from wine to redeem vinegar and vice versa, and the rabbis hold in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Ila. Dam Rabbi Ila minayin l'torah minara'a aliyafa shitaram l'turuma shinemar v'lo tisu alav chet v'harim chemes chalbal mimenu. It's in my parsha. Parshas Kailach. Rabbi Ila says, from where is it derived with regard to one who separates truma from poor quality produce from superior quality produce? Meaning, in order to fulfill the obligation of separating truma from the high quality produce, that his truma is valid truma, as it is stated, and you shall bear no sin by reason of it, seeing as you have set apart from the best. Numbers 18:32. Wow. 34 years, 33 years, something like that. Goes by like that. Wow. I mean, no, when you're going through it, it's long, but when you pass by, it's, wow. Anyway. The verse is understood as indicating that one who sets aside inferior produce has sinned. It also demonstrates that if one did, in fact, set aside truma from poor quality produce in order to render permitted superior quality produce, his action is effective, and the inferior produce is sanctified as truma. The reason is that if the inferior produce is not consecrated, why would one bear sin? It should be considered as though he did nothing. From here it is derived with regard to one who separates truma from poor quality produce from superior quality produce, that his truma is valid truma. The rabbis agree and hold that in the case of one who separates vinegar in order to redeem wine, his truma is valid, despite the difference in quality, as wine and vinegar are considered a single type of food. But with regard to buying and selling, everyone, including the rabbis, agrees that wine and vinegar are two types of food, as they have different uses. There are those for whom wine is preferable and vinegar is not preferable, and there are those for whom vinegar is preferable and wine is not preferable. Okay, now we're starting a new Mishnah here. We are starting a new Mishnah. 6 of the books of the Mishnah. 5 of the books of the Torah. 4 of the mothers and 3 of the fathers and 2 of the sabbaths that Moshe brought. 1 is a chef. Okay, Mishnah. Hamoiche Pesach Haveroi. Ma shach v'loi modad. Kona modad. V'loi moshach v'loi kona. This Mishnah discusses several methods of acquiring movable property with regard to one who sells produce to another. If the buyer pulled the produce but did not measure it, he has acquired the produce through the act of acquisition of pulling. If he measured the produce but did not pull it, he has not acquired it. And either the seller or the buyer can decide to rescind the sale if the buyer is perspicacious. Wow, SAT word there. Perspicacious. Perspicacious. Expialidocious. And wants to acquire the produce without... who's this? Oh. We gotta continue. I can't take this call. I think I know who it is. Wow. As acquired the produce, the act of accident pulling, he has measured the produce but did not pull it. He has not acquired it, and either the seller or the buyer can decide to rescind the sale. If the buyer is perspicacious and wants to acquire the produce without having to pull it, he wishes to do so before the seller could change his mind and decide not to sell. He rents his place where the produce is located, and his property immediately affects acquisition of the produce on his behalf. With regard to one who buys flax from another, because flax is usually carried around, this purchaser has not acquired it until he carries it from place to place and acquires it by means of the act of acquisition of lifting. Pulling the flax is ineffective, and if it was attached to the ground and he detached any amount, he has acquired it, as the Gemara will explain. Gemara, the Talmud says, the Mishnah, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan. The Mishnah mentions several modes of acquisition without elaboration. It does not explain in which domain the act takes place, whether on the property of the seller or in the public domain. Likewise, it does not specify who performs these actions. The Gemara clarifies these details. Rabbi Asi says that Rabbi Yochanan says, if the seller measured the produce and placed it in an alleyway, which is not the public domain but a location where people can keep their belongings, then even if the buyer did not pull the produce, he acquires it. Amar lo Rabbi Zera lo Rav Asi, Shema lo Yishma Rabbi Elal b'modei l'toch kupasoi. Amar le Demei Hai Mirabanan Kidala Gamri in Shishmaita Madad Latoch Kupaso Memaraboi. Rabbi Zera said to Rabbi Asi, perhaps my teacher heard this halacha from Rabbi Yochanan only with regard to one who measures into his basket that of the buyer, in which case his possessions affect acquisition of the produce for him. But if the produce is placed on the floor of the alleyway, the buyer does not acquire the produce. Rabbi Asi said to him, this one of the sages, meaning Rabbi Zera, seems like one who has not studied halacha. If he measured it into the basket of the buyer, is it necessary to say that he acquires it? If an item is placed in the buyer's basket, it is clearly acquired by him, regardless of the location of the basket. Rather, Rabbi Yochanan's statement with regard to an alleyway must be referring to items placed on the floor of the alleyway. Kibla minei, olo kibla minei. The Gemara asks, did Rabbi Zera accept this claim from Rabbi Asi, or did he not accept it? The Gemara suggests, Tashema, come in here as a proof. Come in here a proof, as Rabbi Yanai says, that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, with regard to a courtyard belonging to partners, which is similar in status to an alleyway, the partners acquire from one another. What, is it not correct to say that there's no difference between placing items on the ground and in their basket? As a partner acquires an item, even when it is placed upon the ground. In accordance with the statement of Rabbi Asi, the Gemara rejects this suggestion. No. This is referring to a case where the item is measured into the basket of the buyer. Hachanami mistavro. The Gemara points out, so too, this is reasonable, meaning Rabbi Zera's statement is reasonable. Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yaakov says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Modav hiniach al gabi simta, lo ikona, kashinan dodi, el lav shmamino, kam b'moidil al kupasoi, kam b'moidil al gabi karka, shmamino. What we're saying here is that Rabbi Yaakov says, that Rabbi Yochanan says, if one measured and placed an item in an alleyway, the buyer has not acquired it. Apparently, these two halachot cited in the name of Rabbi Yochanan are difficult as they contradict each other. Since earlier it was stated that according to Rabbi Yochanan, the buyer can acquire an item in this manner. Rather, isn't it correct to conclude from this apparent contradiction that here, meaning in the statement cited by Rav Asi, he is referring to one who measured into the basket of the buyer, which affects acquisition, and there, in the statement of Rabbi Yaakov, he is referring to one who measures onto the ground, which does not affect acquisition. The Gemara affirms from it, learn from it that this is the case. Shema tashema. The Gemara suggests, coming here, proof from the Mishnah, Madad v'lo mashach, lo kana mai lav b'simta, lo b'rshus harabim. Ihachi ema reisha, mashach v'lo madad kana, b'shicha b'rshus harabim, mi kanya. The Gemara suggests, coming here, a proof from the Mishnah, if he measured the produce but did not pull it, he does not acquire it. What? Is it not referring to one who did so in an alleyway, which indicates that placing produce on the ground in an alleyway does not affect an acquisition, in accordance with the statements of Rabbi Zera? The Gemara rejects this proof. No. The Mishnah is referring to one who did so in the public domain. The Gemara asks, if that is so, say the first clause, if the buyer pulled the produce but did not measure it, he had acquired the produce, but does pulling in the public domain affect acquisition? But don't both Abai and Rabba, don't they both say that Demer Tervayu, Mesira Kaina B'Rishus Rabim, B'Chazar She'eno Shel Shneyan, B'Shicha Kaina V'Simta, B'Chazar Shehi Shel Shneyan, B'Hagba Kaina B'Chol Mokoy? But don't Abai and Rabba both say that passing affects acquisition in the public domain, and in a courtyard that does not belong to either of them, pulling affects acquisition only in an alleyway, or in a courtyard that belongs to both of them, but not in the public domain. And lifting affects acquisition in every place, even in the seller's domain. This demonstrates that pulling in the public domain does not affect acquisition. My Mashach, Nami Diktani, the Gemara answers, what is the meaning of the phrase, if he pulled? That is taught in the Mishnah. My Mashach Nami Diktani B'Rishus Rabim L'Simta. Yachye Mesefa. I haya pikeach soicheres mekoimun. V'i b'rshus rabim miman agar. Hachi kamar. V'i b'rshus ba'alim hi im haya pikeach soicheres mekoimun. The Gemara answers, what is the meaning of the phrase, if he pulled it, that it is taught in the Mishnah? It means that he pulled it from the public domain into an alleyway. The Gemara asks, if that is so, say the latter clause. If the buyer is precipitatious, or whatever that word is, he rents. You know what? We got to look up that word. What is the meaning of that? You know? Having ready insight and understanding of precipitatious. Wow. Perspicacious. If the buyer is perspicacious, he rents his place. Meaning, when the produce is located, where the produce is located. The Gemara explains it difficultly, but if the Mishnah is referring to a spot in the public domain, from whom can he rent the place where the produce is located? The Gemara answers, the latter clause is referring to a separate halacha. And this is what the Mishnah is saying. If the produce is in a domain that has an owner, if he is perspicacious, he rents the place where the produce is located from the owner. Rav Shmuel Damar Tarvayu, the Gemara continues to discuss the manner in which an acquisition takes place. Rav and Shmuel both say, and that's it for today.